What do you mean when you say Chris is a law unto himself?
Well, I think what I mean is that anything that he's ever got involved in, he's come home and he's asked me my opinion and we've had long chats about it. But I think at the end of the day, I've always felt he'd just go and do it anyway, regardless of what I say to him.
What motivates Chris?
Well, I suppose in some ways, what motivates all of us is a desire for recognition. By that, I don't mean fame, but recognition from other people, looking at you and seeing your qualities. And I think maybe he just needs that to an extent that he's prepared to push the boundaries maybe a little bit further than some people are.
Does he have an ego?
Certainly has a very big ego, yes.
Why do you preach, Chris?
Why do I preach?
What gives Chris Hudson the right to preach?
Well, that's a good point. Sometimes I ask myself the same question because, in a way, there's a part of me that thinks it's very egotistical, very ego-centered, wanting to be in a pulpit, preaching to someone. And then there's another part of me that genuinely accepts it as a calling. And I might have said this to you before, Anna, but I think it's a feeling. You know, the whole God thing, the whole wanting to be in the pulpit, the whole feeling that you want to talk about God's great love and compassion is a feeling. But that still doesn't stop the ego working as well. I always had this thing about standing up for the underdog. One of the names they called me in the Union was the patron saint of hopeless cases, St. Jude. And they used to laugh in the Union when anyone walked through the door who really seemed like a hopeless case. They used to say, well, refer them to Chris. Chris will look after that. And I'd end up in the Labour Court or the Employment Appeals Tribunal. And, dare I say modestly, I had a good track record. Today is a very special service. It's to remember Holocaust Sunday. When Hell asked Hitler in the 20s what he intended doing if he ever had full freedom of action against the Jews, and his response was, if I'm ever really in power, the destruction of the Jews will be my first and most important job. As soon as I have power, I shall have gallows after gallows erected, for example. Then the Jews will be hanged one after another, and they will stay hanging until they stink. You're preaching to people who are free thinkers. You're preaching to people who will decide what the Bible says to them through their own intellect. And sometimes I think it would be great to preach to people who don't understand that. Because there's a lot of people, I believe, Anna, who turn from religion because the orthodoxy they find crucifying. And people, for all their own reasons, maybe hurt, maybe they've been hurt by a church. So instead of just turning from a church, they turn from God. Beware the utopian dreamer. He will sacrifice millions to create his new utopia. And we see them all the time. Mugabe, Mao, Lenin, Hitler, Pinochet. Utopian dreamers who believe there is a perfect world in their mind that you will eventually subscribe to. The only problem with their perfect utopian dream is the nightmare for the rest of us, because we are not perfect. Thank God we're not perfect, and will never fit their utopian dream. And such was Hitler, a utopian dreamer.
Today's cross-border services leave Belfast for Dublin 4 times daily, and they're set to improve. Yet only 4 years ago, the terrorists tried to kill it off altogether. The response from both sides was the creation of the Peace Train by Chris Hudson from Dublin and Sam McCautry from Belfast.
It was the people that said no. It was the ordinary folk as well that were being shot and killed. But they were the ones that said, we don't want this war. And I think that's an aspect of history that has been left out, and the people need to be written back into the story. All those people that travelled on trains, all those ordinary people that held prayer meetings, the nearly 1 million people who signed signatures outside the GPO for the 2 young boys who were murdered in Warrington and other killings, when they queued for an hour to sign a condolence book and left flowers, so many flowers that we had to get the Irish Air Corps to fly 2 plane loads of flowers over to the families in Warrington.
I have seen the morning burning golden on the mountain in the sky.
The trade union marches, where thousands of ordinary workers came out and said, not in my name. There will be no war, no killings in my name. That it'll be by dialogue we'll solve the Irish question, not by the gun.